Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back once again to Today in African History with Baba Shaka. I'm Baba Shaka, and today is July 17, 2021, and it is the anniversary of the African boycott of the Summer Olympic Games. The opening ceremony of the 1976 21st Olympic Games in Montreal was upturned by the withdrawal of 25 African countries. They were all protesting New Zealand's sporting links with apartheid South Africa, and more than 300 competitors did not take part in the Games, which meant many events were either cancelled or rescheduled. Approximately 20 of the 26 countries who withdrew from the competition had already traveled to Montreal, but eventually returned home. The list of those who boycotted the Olympics was Libya, Iraq, Kenya, Zambia, Nigeria, the Gambia, the Sudan, Ghana, Tanzania, Uganda, Algeria, Ethiopia, Madagascar, Central African Republic, Gabon, Chad, Togo, Niger, the Congo, Mauritius, Upper Volta, which is now Burkina Faso, Malawi, Egypt, and Guyana, which is located on the northern coast of South America. Now, what happened? The short answer is a boycott. The longer answer begins just after World War II and ends with South Africa's entire constitution being rewritten in the early 1990s. The 1976 African boycott of the Montreal Summer Olympics not only disrupted several sporting events, but went on to change the world as well. Now, to understand what brought about the 1976 Olympic boycott, you need to understand the historic South African policy of apartheid. In 1948, the far-right National Party gained control of the South African government and began enforcing a set of racial policies that could best be described as, quote-unquote, the U.S.-style segregation on steroids. South Africa's white minority pushed the country's black majority onto reservations and seized 80% of the land. Interracial interactions, including marriage and sex, were banned by law, and a rigid racial hierarchy was enforced. It took the global community a while to react to these draconian measures, perhaps due in part to dealing with the aftermath of World War II, or more likely, the lack of concern for African people and African lives. Some countries, most notably the United States, held similar views and policies when it came to the issue of race. By the 1960s, however, many other countries began to coalesce around an informal athletic boycott of South Africa. In 1964, South Africa was banned from competing in the Olympic Games. By 1970, they had been expelled from the International Olympic Committee altogether. Even outside of the Olympics, though, most other countries refused to compete with South Africa, including the West Indies cricket team. But that's another story for another day. New Zealand, however, was the exception. Its rugby team, somewhat ironically known as the All Blacks because of the color of their uniform, had been racially integrated from its beginnings, consisting mainly of a mix of white New Zealanders and native Maori players. Therefore, because of apartheid, the country was only able to send its white players on South African tours, a restriction to which it happily has acquiesced. So I'm stuttering here. I'm so excited. Right? So the Maori players were left at home. Only the white players can go tour South Africa. This accommodation to South Africa's unconscionable laws was controversial in New Zealand even before the 1976 boycott. In 1960, for example, a campaign collected 150,000 signatures on a petition to force the South African government to welcome the whole team, white and Maori. South Africa responded by granting the non-white All Black players quote-unquote honorary white status, but many were understandably not happy with the compromise. In 1976, everything came to a head. On June 16, a mass protest of black students against the changed education policies broke out in South Africa. The South African government responded by massacring hundreds of protesting children. 2 weeks later, though, the All Blacks once again began touring South Africa as if nothing had happened. Julius Nyerere, president of Tanzania, could not remain silent about the situation any longer. If South Africa was excluded from the Olympics for their unconscionable behavior, he argued, New Zealand should be excluded as well for turning a blind eye to it. When the Olympic Committee balked at his demands, Nyerere called for a boycott, and his teams, along with more than 30 other countries, mainly black-controlled countries in Central Africa, simply walked away and sat out the Olympics. The boycott was an unprecedented demonstration of black African solidarity and brought new global attention to the inhumanity of apartheid, leading eventually to severe economic sanctions against South Africa by powerful governments like Great Britain and others. Eventually, in 1991, apartheid was finally dismantled, but it all started with an Olympic boycott. In 1976, as the Olympics were ramping up in Montreal, Quebec, mere days before the opening ceremonies, more than 30 teams, as I mentioned before, simply packed up and went home. In some cases, players were already competing in the primaries, but they just spontaneously quit, throwing the schedule into chaos. The whole thing resulted in a severely modified Olympics, particularly in track and field competition, which had to get by without the star athletes from Tanzania and Kenya. Lost revenues was estimated at 1 million Canadian dollars as tickets and hotel rooms had to be refunded. This was definitely an example of what can be achieved when people and countries of like-mindedness band together in opposition of tyranny and injustice. Now, once again, I thank all of you who have subscribed to our channel. To those of you who have not yet subscribed, we encourage you to hit that subscribe button just below the screen and lend us your much needed support in our endeavors to bring you these daily lessons. Please like and leave a comment down in the comment section. But most importantly, please share, especially with the young amongst us, because as you and I both know, this material is not taught in our schools. So, until tomorrow, inshallah, this is Baba Shaka with Today in African History. Masalam.